Whatever you do, just finish it. If you don't respect yourself enough to commit to your word, that's just a direct reflection of not only yourself, but of your company and your future, right? So just don't give up. Just keep going, even if it gets hard, because usually when it gets hard, just right over that little bump is the reward.
That was Tiffany Campos, founder of Heritage Bread Pudding. And this is Making It Here, a podcast by Epicenter NYC, where we spotlight the real stories behind entrepreneurs, artists, creators, and business leaders forging their own path. Every week, we dive into the hustle, the setbacks, the small wins that make the big picture possible. And every guest will have something to teach us, because making it here isn't easy. I'm your host, Amber Castillo. Food often carries more than taste. It can bring back memories of family, traditions, and familiar places. That's a response many people have to the dessert at the center of today's episode. That dessert is Heritage Bread Pudding, the creation of Tiffany Campos. In less than a year, she's taken her Puerto Rican family recipe and built it into a growing business, appearing at church fundraisers, pop-ups, the Grand Central Holiday Market, and soon Latin Food Fest. Today, I sit down with Tiffany to talk about the realities of building something from the ground up. From long nights in the kitchen to questions of scale and what it means to honor her grandmother's legacy along the way. Let's jump in.
So I'm Tiffany Campos, and I'm the owner of Heritage Bread Pudding.
What is Heritage Bread Pudding?
Heritage Bread Pudding is a new company I developed only 9 months ago. It is a take on a classic Puerto Rican dessert. So it's regional. Our family's from Aguadilla, but it's a beautiful custard filled with raisins, and it's baked until golden brown and then traditionally eaten cold or at room temperature.
For someone who's never tried it, how would you describe the bread pudding?
I would say, firstly, it has a fudge-like texture. It's a little sticky. It has a nice density to it. It's subtly sweet. It's not too overwhelming. And it's chock full of raisins. We add a lot of real butter to our batter as well. So it's definitely rich.
What would you say makes it stand out from other desserts or comfort foods?
I think it's simplicity. It's me with less than 10 pantry items. It's definitely not as publicly known, I would say. A lot of people have tried bread pudding, but not necessarily this particular type of bread pudding. And it's also not available in stores. If you do have it in this format, it's probably going to be at a mom and pop restaurant or at maybe your favorite tia's house during the holiday season.
Yeah. And do people ever get emotional when they taste it?
Oh my God, yes. I even get emotional even thinking about it. It's been a whirlwind. Again, we've only been out for about 9 months with our first public event last November. So we haven't really hit a year yet. Some of the most common reactions to taste testers have been like holding their chests. We've had tears. We've had just like long pauses and hugs. It's more than bread pudding. We're actually selling a nostalgia, a beautiful memory back to your childhood. A memorable experience was one woman who had recently lost her father a few years back. She tried it and she just stopped in her tracks and just tears were coming down her face. And of course, I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? And my husband and I, we were working the event together. She goes, guys, you haven't understand. This tastes like what my dad used to. He used to cook for me all the time. He used to pour his love into him, to everything that he served. And this just brought me back. She said, thank you. And she was just crying. And it was just like a really beautiful, emotional experience. And honestly, at the end of the day, I almost feel like that's my favorite part, being able to connect with our customers. Not just, I guess the core of our brand of Heritage Bread Pudding.
How did this go from being a family recipe to a business?
In the beginning, I mentioned to you briefly that I worked in hospitality for over 10 years. So I was always around food, events, and fun. I always try to to build these beautiful, memorable experiences. And when I had my daughter, I took some time afterwards. And right before I was planning on going back to work, I was like, you know what? I have a creative itch. It's just something that I need to do. And we decided, you know what? Let's just put that forward. If there's something that you wanted to do, like, speaking to my husband and deciding what's best for our family, he's like, go ahead, do it. What is it? So I'm like, well, you know how everyone's been asking us if we make this budin? what if we actually sell it? Let's just try. Let's see. Let's just see. Our church was having a barbecue and they were looking for volunteers. It's all just to raise money for the church, nothing crazy. And I told my husband and my mother, I'm like, how about this? Why don't we use this as an opportunity to share, not only share with the community, but use it almost like a tester, right? Let's see how the community reacts to it. And that day, we sold 150 bite sized cubes, which was incredible. One woman bought four at a time, and she was like, I don't know where this came from. I don't know where you came from, but thank you. This is it. So after that, I kind of pushed me to go ahead and get my food certification, move forward to try to find a licensed commercial kitchen and do our first event, which led us to the Grand Central Holiday Market.
Was there a particular moment when you realized like people outside your family should try this?
Oh yeah, of course. We've over the years, our family's made this for over 30 years, right? So at first it was my grandmother, and then it went to all five of my aunts. Everyone made their own rendition of this delicious dessert. And then after a while, my mom's like, "Take the reins, girl. I'm done. The kitchen's closed." I'm like, you know what? If I don't start making this or taking the reins, as I was mentioning, where's this gonna go? Where's this huge piece of my childhood and a tiny piece of our culture? Where is that gonna go? It went from an idea to a project to a maybe a what if to like, okay, no, this is important. We need to run with this and make sure that it's done well.
Do you have a memory of your grandma or your childhood that made you see this dessert as special?
There's a ton of memories that I can associate with this bread pudding. One of which, watching how my grandmother would pick apart the bread with her just with her hands, like just picking it apart. And she has these long magenta fuchsia nails, but she would just make sure to carefully go through each piece of bread to make sure that it was palatable, that it was something that wouldn't be too overwhelming for each slice, and go through the batter and just really take her time. So that's where I realized that this is not something you just whip up and, all right, serve it to your guests. It's something you have to respect. And I think that's why it was so important to me to make sure that if I was going to make this dessert, I want it to be the best. I want it to be the best represented, beautiful, elegant, just how she is. But yeah, that memory always sticks to me. Every time I'm picking apart the bread myself, which is how we still do it in the kitchen, I remember her long magenta nails.
Your grandmother's on the packaging. What's the story behind that photo and what it means to you?
So what I ended up doing was creating a label in that beautiful maroon color. I'm not sure if you'd seen the background. It was a blend of my favorite color, my grandmother's favorite color, and I wanted to somewhat, I guess, preserve to some of the privacy of my grandmother, not use her actual face, but that photo that's on the logo now is a photo of my grandmother when she was 12 in Aguadilla. It was a beautiful photo that I've always seen around my aunt's house, my mother's house, and I just always fell in love with it. It's a nice sepia tone. It's interesting. I think it was my way of sort of making that little girl feel special when I know at that time she didn't feel too special. So it's kind of my way of embracing her and putting her on the pedestal that she deserves.
And I imagine kind of figuring out the business side wasn't easy.
Yeah, so we had to figure out, given that we're using a commercial kitchen, it is rented, right? Based on a set of 8 hours and whatever time that you need. So trying to put in that information, finding out what, the current market price is for, let's say, the raisins, and, trying to find the best bread, which was really also really important to me. I didn't want to have any seed oils or anything that was unnecessary. I wanted it to be very simple ingredients. We went day by day. Honestly, we didn't know what we were doing in the beginning. We've never done this before, and I did a lot of googling and a lot of chat GPTing and to try and help me get my way to this new venture. So then we finally came up after also researching a few competitors, and by competitors, just other desserts, right? There's no one else doing bread pudding the way that we are, so there's not really a direct competitor per se. But seeing what they were charging, right, and for the portion size, and making sure things were measured accordingly so that we wouldn't lose out. We also wanted to provide value too, right? We just didn't want to put together another product and here you go, a one stop shop. We wanted to make sure that it felt special, that it felt like a gift. And I wanted it to be a nice host option, if you will, right? So we put it in a commutable packaging, something small that you could just throw in a tote bag if you need to. And We thought about the packaging, pricing, the labels, and just put that all together, divided it by the time that we were in the kitchen, and came up with a pricing.
And how did you kind of adjust prices due to ingredient costs or tariffs, especially with the economy?
The egg shortage, that was crazy. So we were initially paying, I think it was like 16 bucks for 5 dozen eggs, and it went up all the way to, I think it was 25 or $26. So being that we were still new, and we still are, again, less than a year, I didn't feel comfortable really raising the price dramatically because of that. So I sort of let it sit for a while. So it's been a slow climb. We started at 12.99 and now we're at 14.99, which I feel like is still very, very affordable. So each piece is about $4, and it comes in the pack of four. We're also exploring an option where we can offer a single serve for those that maybe still can't afford that price point, but still want to enjoy and share that family that we've created.
You had mentioned one of your, first major events was at the Grand Central Holiday Market. Can you talk about what that was like?
It was so much fun. First of all, we did it through Made in NYC, which have been an incredible resource. So any entrepreneur that's looking out there, so we can just for a start, and you manufacture at least 50% of your products in New York City, reach out to them, apply. It's completely free membership. They offer complimentary resources like product photography, workshops. It's just a wonderful resource. Highly recommend it. So I find out that they were looking to highlight Black, Indigenous, people of color brands at their holiday market for the very first time that would be held at Grand Central. And at the time, I'm still thinking that this was just going to be like a little side thing, let's go, as we go. And after we went so well at this church event, I was discussing with my mom. I'm like, you know what? Maybe I could just apply to this. Look, it's due tomorrow. Should I just do it? She's like, yeah, go ahead. Let's just see. Let's see how it goes. That's how everything in my family starts. Let's just see. No real expectations. And I applied to it right at the deadline. And what ended up happening, they responded to us about a week later, like, hey, congratulations, you've been chosen to be a part of this wonderful experience. And I was ecstatic. Then it came to try to prepare for that. Ramona and I, we've never done this before, let alone for a 9-day stint at Grand Central in a cultural hub in a complete touristy area. There was so many moving parts that we had to figure out. We had to figure out signage, proper packaging now, right? Real packaging that was going to sustain, where we're thinking about how to make it presentable. How do you set up a table? How do we do samples? How big are the samples? How do we serve that? So that was our first time really stepping into that environment. I think we did pretty well, given that it was our first time. There were definitely a bunch of challenges that came with that. So we had prepared what we thought was enough for the week, and it turns out we sold out in 2 days. 2 days. And while I knew people love the bread pudding, I didn't realize that it was going to be flying off the table the way that it did. It really surprised the both of us. And while it was super exciting, it was frightening too. Like, how are we going to prepare more now for the rest of the time that we're here? So we definitely weren't sleeping. And then after those first 2 days, I went straight to the kitchen, baked some more. My husband also has a full-time job, so he was doing that. We had to figure out, with our daughter, making sure that she was safe and she was comfortable. We went back to the kitchen, got it done, and we went straight to Grand Central again, and we rinsed and repeat. A day after that, my husband goes again, I think we need to go back to the kitchen. We're selling out again. And I had already made triple the amount that I thought we were going to need for the rest of the time that we were there. Sold out again. We also learned that the packaging at the time was not strong enough. So whenever we prepackaged our bread pudding, the boxes were collapsing in the refrigerator that we would have overnight at the commercial kitchen. So by the time we'd get to Grand Central, the boxes were like squished. I was like, no. Thankfully, the product was okay, so we were able to refresh them as we went. But again, those are costs that we didn't foresee. Like, let's go ahead now. We have to get some new boxes, and it was nuts, but it was so much fun. That was also a time where I was rushing through the batter, and I realized that you can't let it sit that long, right? They're going to disintegrate. It's not going to hold up. Your bread pudding is not going to set properly. So I had some of those trays that went to the garbage. It was nuts, but it was such a learning curve for us. But it was wonderful, and I would certainly do it again.
How much of your growth would you say has been word of mouth versus, events like this?
probably about 60% of it. Honestly, we've completed, I just counted 30 plus events for the year. We've really hit the ground running. We've been hustling. I've been trying my very, very best to put us out there. But the majority of our clients are coming back because either they're repeat customers, they've tried this before and they know what they're gonna get. But oh, my friend said, oh, my cousin, oh, my mother bought this. And I'm people are just going. They're going, they're talking about us, and I appreciate that so much.
Yeah, and, even with all your family support, I imagine, kind of running a business isn't all smooth, and, you've talked about imposter syndrome. How does that show up for you, and how do you handle it?
Mainly in the culinary sector, just because I respect chefs so much. I've worked around them my entire life. They're super talented. Many of them have gone to school for it. So I never want to be seen as, oh, she's not a pastry chef. She's not a, because I'm not. I really am not. I love to bake. I'm a hobbyist. So feeling that way in a room filled with all of these renowned chefs, one, it's humbling, definitely, but it's also a beautiful experience because they've welcomed me with open arms, tasting the bread puddings like this is it. This is wonderful. I think a lot of that, and then also not really seeing a product the way that we've created on beautiful gourmet shops shelves, right? The majority of things that you see are European and absolutely delicious, right? But there hasn't really been a New Rican bread pudding on the shelf, right? So I'm feeling that way, which I think is completely normal. I think, like I was mentioning, even aside from being an entrepreneur, people in general, we are going day by day, and there's always going to be insecurities. But so as long as you're working hard and you're putting your best foot forward, you're respecting your peers, the people that you're working with, the people that you meet, and you humble yourself, you're fine.
What would you say has been the toughest challenge in running Heritage Bread Pudding?
I would say adapting to things that you aren't necessarily expecting, right? There's going to be a lot of last minute changes, last minute errors. You're working with so many new people now. It's not just you. Once you're outside and you're working with event coordinators and venues, you need to be able to adapt to whatever it is that they need to work with. And you have to understand that sometimes your plan is not going to just work out. It isn't. So how do you pivot? How do you recreate what you've already spent weeks doing? So that's been a challenge for me, because it's could be disheartening, right? You've already have this vision in your head, and I just learned to just not take it negatively. I'm still working on that, trying to take that energy and just be like, hey, it's not an end all be all. Like, it's just a redirection. It'll be fine.
Yeah, and was there kind of a moment when you thought, "I'm not sure if this will work out?"
There was one moment, not that I didn't think that it was going to work out as a business as a whole, but more so that I had to reevaluate my thoughts around a certain group of people that I was serving. We had a huge event planned out. We got rained out. It was crazy, and we were left with a bunch of product after almost a year of selling out. So I was like, you know what? Instead of just throwing this in the garbage, because of when I see the product or I see anything in the garbage, I see all of our hard work. I see the hours that we spent in the kitchen packaging. So I was like, how can I can get rid of this with some respect and still sort of make a dent on my community, which is what I wanted to do. So we decided to put together beautiful platters of samples. I think there were maybe about 30 pieces each. And we went around and we offered it to service workers. We offered it to construction zones and companies. We offered them to hospitals, to FDNY, NYPD, just as a thank you.
Yeah, and on that flip side, right, when did you have that, "This is really happening" moment?
I think I have a little bit of that moment every time I'm at an event. Every time I get a new connection or a catering request, having opportunities just lined up in our emails, just hearing that. I think too recently we went to Johnson and Wales University for the first time, and we're very excited about that. We're now working with them and their senior class on a beautiful project. where they've undertaken our company and looking to improve it and show us how to scale. And they're going to help us just improve our overall quality, which we are so excited to be involved in. So I think for me, that made me feel not only incredibly blessed, but I'm seeing that this is something that is worth it.
How did that partnership come about?
So the entrepreneur space is where we manufacture all of our products. The founder, Catherine Gregory, has been absolutely wonderful. If there's any budding entrepreneurs that are looking to build their food business, I highly recommend that kitchen. So that's how we got that opportunity. And of course, I said yes. And it's just like a weird full circle moment because I remember before COVID, I was still in the hospitality industry and I was looking to go back to school to get my master's. And I was looking into Johnson and Wales. And it never happened because of, life circumstances. But I found myself there yesterday and I was driving and I'm just thinking, I was like, oh my God, I forgot about that. I forgot that for a hot minute I was looking into the different programs that they had. So it was really cool to experience it now as a guest speaker, going there, speaking to 30 students and a few of their staff members. That made me feel wonderful.
And is there any kind of advice that you tend to share with those students that you would give to someone starting a business, especially based on a family recipe?
Whatever you do, just finish it. Don't give up in the middle. Like when it gets hard, when it gets tough, when it gets sloppy, when it's not quite right, just put it out there. Just do it because you don't know where you're gonna go if you don't try. And we hear that all the time, right? But when you're actually putting it into practice, you realize how important that actually is. If you don't respect yourself enough to finish on time or commit to your word, that's just a direct reflection of not only yourself, but of your company and your future, right? So just don't give up. Just keep going, even if it gets hard, because usually when it gets hard, just right over that little bump is the reward.
How do you see heritage bread pudding growing in the next few years?
Every time I think about it, I get excited because I see the growth and I see the future. I would love to have heritage bread pudding become an all-encompassing family experience. I want it to be interactive. I want people to choose to go see us, bring their out of town guests to go to Heritage Bread Pudding. I want people to be able to see us bake it. I want people to be able to read our story and have customer experience where you're not just going and purchasing a box of bread pudding. You're going there and you're learning. You're joining a new community and you're coming back. I want it to be a destination, not necessarily another pop-up bakery, but something more than that. Hopefully when we get the funding, we'll be able to put that really to fruition and action.
What has your grandmother said about this?
She's super proud. I was just visiting her there in Florida, and I brought her a box of the bread pudding. She took it apart immediately, and she wanted to serve everyone in the living room. And I saw her like quietly take the box and fold it, and she like put it on display. And that was a really nice moment for me because I'm like, oh, she appreciates that. It's just and if only she knows how much she means to me and to our family. Every time that I can, I try to let her know why it was so important for me to have her face on there. But she's in the beginning stages of dementia, so sometimes she forgets. She'll forget that I was in her kitchen or we were there on vacation. And but every time that I have an opportunity to retell that story of what we're doing and to retell it to her, I make sure that it's in the most jovial spirit that I can possibly give her.
Yeah. And if you could leave listeners with one thought about heritage bread pudding or, the story behind it, what would that be?
We're still learning. We're still learning, and I'm learning a lot about the history of bread pudding along the way, which is exciting. I learned that bread pudding initially came into form as a savory option in England, in Europe, and then was actually taken in the Caribbean and Latin America and turned into a dessert. And that's why it's so predominant there. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know that, which was really cool. And we're also learning that each country, each state does things a little differently, right? We hear about Jamaican bread pudding, how it's really similar, Haitian, Dominican Republic, Cuba. Like, there's so many different countries that make it slightly different, and but we all share this during the holiday season, during beautiful celebrations. It was cool hearing about that.
Now I'm going to ask just some rapid fire questions just for fun. If you could turn any unexpected flavor into bread pudding, a new bread pudding, what would that be?
Maybe PB&J.
Oh, would you rather have one giant national retail deal or keep doing more pop-ups and, those local collaborations?
I would love to do local collaborations more.
And which is harder, getting the recipe perfect or selling it at events?
The recipe perfection, absolutely.
If you'd like to try heritage bread pudding, you can buy it directly through the website, heritagebreadpudding.com. Tiffany will also be at this year's Latin Food Fest, coming up soon on September 13th and 14th at Industry City in Brooklyn. Find details at thelatinfoodfest.com. That's all for today. Thanks for supporting us as we do our best to support our community. We couldn't do it without you. For more stories like this, make sure to subscribe to our newsletter at epicenter-nyc.com.